Good Saturday morning, guys, and welcome to another fabulous episode of Exit Strategy Radio Show. I'm your host, Colin J. Millette. Yes, that's me, broker owner of Exit Realty Low Country Group in beautiful North Charleston, South Carolina. Guys, we are action packed over here. Guys, hopefully you guys have been having a fabulous summer. Trustfully, the heat has not been unbearable. So, as the market continues to be fiercely hot, we're going to have some conversation today. So, because we don't want the market to be unbearable either. So, guys, for our listeners, guys, you're everywhere, you're scattered. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. For those of you who download our episode as a podcast, guys, thank you. You're listening to this on our podcast. It's Monday for you, or whatever other day of the week that you decided to tune in, listen, or what have you. Check out our YouTube channel, guys. We're everywhere, and we're trying to make sure we deliver a word and a message to you that's going to be relevant in the times that we are in this real estate market. So, guys, along that vein, along that line, we have with us today one of my favorite guys, Jim Duffy with Alcova Mortgage. Jim, how are you doing today?
Corwin, I'm doing great today, and it's so good to be with you. It's really an honor to be with you because I love your show, and I love the fact that you make it fun, but you also bring so much information that's very valuable for buyers and sellers, right? Or anyone just kind of looking at the market. I really have enjoyed your show many, many times.
Well, I appreciate that. That is always helpful. We just want to have a good time. And we just want to, give people some content in a fashion that that's palatable. Because look here, we don't want to be boring and stuffy. You know what I'm saying? We don't want that. Because look here, that's terrible. You sitting there eating some dry stuff in the Thanksgiving and over there about to choke. No, we don't want all that. We want to give you some moist dressing. Get some
Yes, is
gravy or
hoping
something.
that makes a
Yeah,
good sandwich the day after. That's all.
exactly. So, Jim, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us today. So, Jim, if you don't mind, give our listeners a little bit about you, where you're from, and also where you serve. Our listeners are scattered across the country. We have some in other continents and other parts of the world. So, where are you doing mortgages at?
First, I didn't know you were international now. I think that's totally awesome. And anyone who listens internationally, come to Charleston. You'll absolutely love it if you haven't been, but I think most have been. So yeah, I'm with Alcova Mortgage and been doing mortgages for actually over 20 years now. It's amazing. Time flies. I know I don't look like the kid. Just kidding. But yeah, over 20 years. And so you know my story, but I'll share it real quick. I started in the business in Atlanta for the first 10 years. And then we vacationed here every year for so long that when the housing crisis hit, you remember those days, we said, well,
Yeah.
like now or never. Our kids are so young, we could move now, or we have to wait till they're all out of high school. Let's do it. And so we moved to our dream town here in Charleston and have never looked back.
Awesome. So you with Alcova Mortgage, and you guys do loans where? I mean, what parts of the country you guys really focus on, or where you have
Yeah.
branches at?
So we're based in Virginia, Roanoke, Virginia. And
Hmm.
so I have the branch here in Summerville, actually, is where the actual physical branch is for all of Charleston. And we lend in the Southeast. So we're not really a big national company. We're a regional Southeast company. I lend personally still in Georgia, of course, as well as here and in Florida. And that's it, just those three states. But obviously, most of the business that I do is right here in Charleston, probably a good 90% of it. But every once in a while, it's fun. I still get a past client from Georgia who calls and says, hey, we're moving or whatever.
Well, that's always good, always good. So, Jim, we're talking, kind of as we were, if you will, in studio behind the curtain before we got started here. And, just kind of talking about a conversation everybody's having is about rates, man, and what's going on in the market, and, Charleston market is very unique. I'm a firm believer in that. I mean, I'm a testament to it because I've been in this market for, getting approaching 20 years. So it's a very unique market. And as I compare it to other markets across the state that I work in and other parts of the country that I sometimes, keep an eye on, I'm always intrigued as to the stark differences. But from your perspective, give our listeners kind of the insight. If it was you, what would you be doing? What would you be focusing on? If you
Yeah.
don't mind sharing that perspective with our listeners.
No, I'd be happy to, Corwin, because one thing you're right. I liken it to this. Have you ever had your eye on a certain car? Let's say whatever it is, whatever your car. Okay, I'll use my example because I'm looking at getting a Genesis GV80. It's the new Genesis
Okay.
SUV, right? And so I see them a lot. And so because I got my eye on one and I'm like, ooh, that'd be a nice car, I might get that. I see them pretty much everywhere and I'm really attuned to it. So people in the housing market are sometimes just like that, right? And so you're attuned to all these news stories and headlines and whatnot. The funny thing to me is I see so many headlines right now that say, when will the housing bubble pop? Or when is housing going to melt down? When is 2008 coming again? But then you read the article, that's the headline. You read the article and it basically says it's not. And all the articles say the same thing. Yeah, it's not. It's not. And they're right. It's not.
Look, so when you talked about the car, I almost jumped over here. For those who still listen to hip hop, I almost jumped up over here. I popped up in a brand new Bugatti. When you said car, I went to Bugatti. I'm sorry.
I got this boring little Hyundai.
But I'm sorry. So not to steal the thunder, but you're right. So the article gives you this big headline, like, okay, the real estate market is crashing. And then people start sharing the article before they even read anything. And they read the articles like, nah, that ain't right. That ain't gonna happen.
All of them say the same thing. Yeah, it's amazing. And so, but I will say this, back in December of 2006, this is the story of my life, right? December 2006, I was in Las Vegas at an industry conference. There were 2,500 loan officers there. Remember 2006, it was the heyday, right? We were closed. Yeah. Anyone who walked in the door, we could close a loan for them somehow, some way, right?
Yeah.
They could breathe. We closed the loan. And so we were happy in Vegas, right? Everyone's partying. Everyone's doing their thing. And one guy got on stage and said, if you're in wholesale, meaning behind the scenes lending, just get out. And if you're in retail like me, right? And you, meaning we deal with the home buyers and sellers directly. That's what we do. We're the professionals. Hang on. You better have a lot of savings and hang on tight. And I was like, I don't have a lot of savings. I have a high income, but I don't have a lot of savings because I spend even more.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't paying attention, right? So ever since, and then the housing crash came, that was December 2006. And the beginning of the crash really started in April of 2007. And I didn't want to get caught flat-footed again. So first of all, I stopped spending beyond my means and credit cards got cut up once I got them finally paid off, etc. But the other thing I did was I started paying attention to the market, to the economic reality of a market, so that I could not only foresee for myself, it's coming again or it's not, but also I could help people during different cycles and explain things. And so if you're okay, I'd love to jump into just a couple of numbers and explanations.
Please.
Yeah, ever since then, I have paid attention like a nerd. Because I was not a nerd at that time. So what I'm going to do, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. So I don't know if I can share my screen.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I can. Good. So anyone on YouTube can see this, but I know it's radio and I know numbers don't work very well on a radio. So I'm going to talk through it. Maybe you can put your spin on it as well, Corwin.
No, we're going to tell people to go back to our YouTube channel and watch this right here, Jim, but go right ahead.
It's worth it. Even if you fast forward just to this screen, it's probably worth it just to get a real visual, right? So what this is, and I'll describe it for everyone driving along the road right now listening, it's a chart of mortgage rates from 1972 through today, right? And remember, everyone's heard the story of your parents or your grandparents going, I bought a house at 18% interest, right? It was super high and I bought it anyway. We've all heard those stories. Some of us were alive back then, but we weren't buying houses or even thinking about it. And this is what this chart shows, right? The big run up in rates in the late 70s, early 80s, where it hit 18%. And then the steady really decline downward to 2.5% or 2.25%, wherever it hit a couple of years ago. And then the jump up here at the end. So the only reason I say that is because the trend really has been down for years and years and years. But what I wanted to show here was These dark blue vertical lines are when we're in recession. Every time we're in recession, one thing happens and it becomes very obvious. If you're looking at the chart, you can see it. If you're not, I'll just tell you. We enter recession where rates are high. We go in the middle of a recession and rates drop like a rock. They did in 1980. They did again in 1982. They did it again in 1991. The dot-com bust, look what happened. Rates drop, right? Look what happened here in 2008. Rates went up a little bit in the middle of the recession and then dropped before the end of the recession, right? And we remember that. Remember, that's when rates hit in the 4% range, high fours, which I was like, wow, this is awesome. And the same thing happened in the last recession. And when COVID hit, it was a very short-lived recession. And we've had a big run-up in rates right now, a big run-up. I mean, rates now is today about 5.5%, give or take, depending on credit and all. But they were almost 6.5% just 3 weeks ago. So we've had a huge run-up in rates. And we're probably heading toward recession. So what's that mean? Well, if history is going to repeat itself, it means rates are going to drop and fast.
Okay.
So that's all I wanted to share there, just to get started,
Okay. All right. So if I was to, I guess, ask the question as a consumer, hearing that, so does that mean that they should wait?
Good question.
Okay.
That's
ahead.
the question of the day, and we get it all the time, right? And I'll tell you, there's something going around Facebook and Instagram, which I wish I had invented because it's genius, and I didn't. I'd love to take credit for it. It says, everyone's sharing the same thing. Marry the house, date the rate.
Yeah.
Marry the house, date the rate. And I wish I'd made that up, but I didn't. I was talking about that even before then, but in my own terminology. And what that means is when rates drop, guess what home prices are going to do again? Keep on going up, right?
Yep.
And there's another chart I could share, but I'll just describe it. Every time we hit a recession, guess what has happened? With one exception, guess what's happened to home prices during every recession since 1960, except for 2008? Home prices go up. Home prices go up.
Okay.
They go up during a recession. And it makes sense, right? Because if we enter a recession and there's inflation, which generally leads us there, because the cost of gas is going sky high, the cost of groceries is ridiculous, everything's super high right now. Well, guess what else is going up? Rent's going up.
Okay.
And so if people see everything going up and then their lease comes due and it says, well, it's going to be another $400 a month this year to renew your lease, they're like, I'm out. Yeah. I'm done, especially if rates drop, interest rates drop, mortgage rates drop. And then they say, somehow, some way, let's get into a house because this is dumb. This whole renting thing is for the birds. I want out. I'm tapping out. I want a house. And so home prices go up.
Interesting. So you framed it as being, quote unquote, a nerd.
Now you know. Now it's true.
Now I know. But that's interesting. And I've never really, paid attention to that. I always tell people, obviously from the perspective of working in the market, Jim, we have this outlook and this view and we know what we saw. And I mean, in speaking, every market is different. So, speaking first about the market in Charleston, the Charleston area market always seems to be usually fairly insulated because we have people coming here from all over the world, all over the country, where, we just got named #1 again.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So that rolls people in here all the time. And those people are coming from other areas where, and some of them are retiring coming here on the downslope. So it's not about industry, technology, education. It's about, lifestyle and cost of living for some. So that balances out a sector. And then obviously we do have a strong technology sector here, as well as industry, as well as commerce, because we got ports. I mean, and then education.
And they just dug that even deeper to have more ships come in and bigger ships come in.
Exactly.
Amazing.
So there's so many things going on. And the average consumer just they don't factor that in. The way they factor in is, well, I work here and I make this much money and I can't afford a house. Or I work here, I make this and I can't afford the house that I want. Or I work here, where these people coming from?
That's a big one. Go back to Ohio. I've heard
Yeah,
that more than once.
exactly. I think now we got to diversify because it's not just people from Ohio moving here. They're coming here from California, Las Vegas, New York,
Yeah.
Jersey. I think some people, they used to call them halfback, would come back, move from New York down to Florida
Over
and
there.
come halfway back up to South Carolina. So we got everything. We got
We
everybody.
got the fullbacks, the halfbacks. We got a
Exactly.
little bit of everything. No, that's entirely true. And so I've had so many people, and it sounds like you have had similar conversations. And I think together we've even talked to the same people sometimes who are
Mhm.
like, well, I can't afford the home that I really want. Well, okay, perfect. But how did people in previous generations afford the home that they really wanted? The same way we're going to do going forward in my book. It is get into a home that's better than rent because you own it,
Mhm.
and let that home keep going up in value. Let's say it goes up 5% per year. Guess what? If you're there for 4 years, 5 years, because you have to pay to get out of it, right? You have to pay a commission to get out of it. Let's say you're there for 5 years. You've got 20% equity. So you've got your 20%, then you put into the next house, right? So you move up in house.
Mhm.
So may not be your forever home, maybe your 5 to 7 year home,
Mhm.
which is great. Make memories there. You have backyard barbecues there. I will say this, everyone I know who has made it, right, been successful, who started off in a little tiny house that was smaller than they really wanted and it was not what they dreamed of, wishes they still had that house. Everyone, all of them, because that's where they made their best memories. It's the first thing they owned, and it
Mhm.
also was a stepping stone to growing equity that became their wealth to move up to that next house that is the ultimate dream home. And I say that tongue in cheek, sort of, but so many people who have made it big in life have talked, reminiscing about their first small little home together, and it's just great memories. So I would encourage people, yeah, you can't afford your perfect home right now. I get it. But how do you do that over time? Well, build equity and wealth in a home and then use that as your down payment toward the next home.
And that is very interesting, especially your first time newer buyers, things of that nature. Finding an entry level home is challenging enough in the current climate. But then obviously if you look at it from the larger perspective, from the bigger picture, then you can make this happen more easily. Oftentimes people aren't counseling. To be very direct about it, most agents aren't asking the questions of the consumer. Hey, what's your big picture? What are you trying to get to? So that we can line you up. We're always, well, what do you want in a house? And we're not asking, well, tell me this, but the question, okay, well, do you need that house now? You're looking to buy a 4-bedroom house. It's just you. Well, you plan on getting married, or you maybe only plan on having a family, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
get it, but it's just you today. So do you need to buy the 4-bedroom, or can you buy two? Can you buy three? Maybe, and then later move up to that larger home.
Well,
You
that's
know?
how people build wealth, right? And that's why I love your approach to real estate because you take that counseling approach of, yeah, let's hear everything you want, but then let's go deeper. You know, I read a book once, I wish I could remember what it was. Someone said, if you ask the same question a different way 7 different times, you usually get to the core of what the really motivation is, our motivation is, right? And I've tried that with people. And by the sixth time, they're like, I've answered this, but they always answer it differently. And then you get to the core, right? And I love that.
So for our listeners, guys, what we're talking about is making sure that the professionals you're working with understand your big picture. What is you're trying to do? I always say that from the lending side, Jim, you guys take quote unquote the colors of people's lives and you paint them on a canvas that is presented to an underwriter for a loan. And if the
Yeah.
picture is beautiful, then, boom, I'm gonna buy that picture. I'm gonna give you this money for this picture, and you'll be able to buy this house. But if that picture is ugly, then so understanding gives them a broader palette. If you understand what their big picture is and also their history, and have a better perspective on it, it broadens the palette of colors that you have available to paint this loan. So you get to
Oh, thank
create
you.
something
Yes,
with that loan.
totally.
You see what I'm saying? You get to create something with this loan or with this opportunity to get them a loan that otherwise might not have been created because you didn't have the full SWOT of colors that you could have had. So, guys, look, as consumers, if you're working with a professional, you don't trust them, then that ain't who you need to be working with. Period.
I totally
If
agree
you
with
don't,
that. Yeah. Your
you need
trust
to
is
be
the
out
base of
because
every relationship. Yes,
exactly.
totally.
Because if they don't tell you, Jim, what you need to know, then to be very frank about it, you run the risk of doing them a disservice. They don't tell me, my agents, our team, what we need to know, then we run the risk of doing them a disservice. And I know you are not, and I know that I'm not in this industry to do a disservice to people. We're trying to help people. So it's
That's what I
important
love
that
about this industry is we are able to serve people and help them with one of the most important purchases of their lives,
Mhm.
and then to manage that purchase, right? And so it hit home what you said about painting the picture in two ways. First of all, because this Saturday morning, as we're speaking, my wife and daughter are in France in the hometown of Van Gogh, which I think is totally cool. So they're
Ah,
seeing some awesome art as we speak and
okay.
enjoying it. And I am not. I wish I were. But but nonetheless, one thing that hits home as well is yes, every once in a while we get a buyer who comes for the home loan and it's like they want to hide something. And I've been doing this for a long, long time. I've done thousands and thousands of home loans. I kind of have an intuition that we're hiding something. So when you say paint a beautiful picture, sometimes there's some things in that picture that are taken alone. It's like, oh, that one's kind of ugly, but it blends in with the whole picture and it's a beautiful picture. And
Mhm,
that's the picture of each person's life, financial
mhm.
life, right? And you're right. If we know the whole story, we can then either right away, most of the times right away, or we set a plan to get there as quickly as possible to present it to the underwriter for a clean approval, right?
Mhm.
My team and I have been known for, and we get one of my underwriters laughs at us. She's like, you know how to put together a difficult deal that some loan officers wouldn't even touch that. And I'm like, well, because it helps people, right?
Mhm.
Takes a little bit more time sometimes, but it helps people. And that's what we're here for.
You know, you're given you're given a gift, if you will, Jim. You're given you know, okay, I can see things because sometimes it's from experiences and I'm gonna share this. This is probably the first time I'm gonna say this out loud, but well, the first time I'm gonna say it in this recording. So for our listeners, guys, just understand this ain't quite the live version, but it's gonna be live enough today. If I had ever to preach quote unquote a trial sermon, because everybody that's been a common conversation or theme here that people have been saying to me, and I don't know, but if I had to, it probably scare most people because it will be framed that the shiggity I've been through, the stuff I've been through. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Is the fertilizer for my soul. Does that make sense? So the things that you've been through, the things, Jim, that you've been through, that you have experienced in helping people over the years, are the fertilizer that you use to help others. It is the
Yeah.
seed, it's the fertilizer, it's the soil, it's all those things to help people grow their garden, if you will, of home ownership. That's I've never said that before, but if you look at it, because you know how to tend to and get the weeds out, you know
Yeah.
where to plant, when to water, you know when to do all those things, and people need to take that from you because you have that experience. And oftentimes they just want people to come in and take everything out. And people want to plant like they want to plant a garden overnight. They want to plant the garden today and pick tomatoes or cucumbers or whatever tomorrow, peppers tomorrow. That ain't how this thing here works. So
I
sometimes you
love
gotta
that. See,
stuff.
were you
Go
ever a
ahead.
preacher or are you just in your wannabe? Because you're made
Look
for it.
here. Look here. I don't know. I'm in something to be blunt about. I'm in something, Jim, and that is quite interesting. But you know, I look at things a little differently,
Yeah.
and I'm sharing this because this is call. You know, it's a call.
So I think I love the analogy to a garden. You plant and then you harvest. But in between, you have to work it, right? You have to pull the weeds and whatnot. Because it's housing, sometimes I liken it to housing or shelter, right? A lot of people want to build a castle, but it takes years to build a castle. They last for centuries, but it takes years. But they want to do it in the time it takes to put up a tent, right? And so you can put a tent up in 10 minutes. You know, it's pretty simple and easy. Of course, a big wind comes along, that tent's flying, and it's not staying put. Big wind comes along with a castle. You've seen those castles in Europe. Obviously, Europe's in my mind right now. You've seen some of those. They've been around for centuries. I mean, some of them since, well, you know the time frames, but they've been around since the 1100s, right? And they're still standing today. And that's but it took a long time to build that structure that solid. And so, yeah, to your point, I think that's the way building wealth and building into the perfect house and the dream house take place. But it does happen. It just takes place over time sometimes.
So, Jim, look, we've had a fabulous show. You know, we've had a good time. So we went right through our time today. But before we go, how can our listeners get in contact with you?
Oh, it's very simple. I'm super easy to find. Just Google Jim Duffy Mortgage, and I'm everywhere. Or Jim Duffy at Alcova Mortgage, alcova.com. Alcova.com. ALCOVA is how you spell that, but alcova.com. Or, Corwin, I will say this, the easiest way, just call you, and you can send them over my way.
No worries. So for our listeners, guys, we've had a fabulous show today. Good time. And we always enjoy Jim. We love Jim. So Jim, again, thank you so much for being on today. For our listeners, guys, as we wrap up today's show, you know, we're always sensitive to the needs of our community. And we know that you all are out here in the community, but we're going to ask you to do something for us. We're going to ask you to serve one another. We're going to ask you to help one another so that in turn, as we help you, you help someone else, and we in turn all help more people together. We love you. We love you. We love you. And we're going to see you guys out there in those streets.